This is a fun conversation with Shawn Slakk. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. Shawn uses the word relish, like in we should relish our diversity. He brings an exciting personal story about the diversity that was part of his early life that led him to study many different languages and to learn about lots of different cultures. The conversation also challenges me and challenges you to think about the diversity in our own lives. Diversity is a fact of our global experience. When we relish it, we open ourselves up to the idea that we contribute our perspective and that we can receive, understand, and enjoy the perspectives of others. That we all get to be who we are, but we get a chance to learn about so many others that have so many diverse histories in their own lives, just like you do. Let's relish the experience of being diverse. Let's be open to the nuanced understanding of life and perspectives that come from others. It's interesting, but in today's world, it's also critically important for our survival and for our joy. Relish that. Enjoy the podcast. Hi, I'm Norah Jones. Welcome to It's About Language. This podcast connects language and culture to life, learning, and hope. You'll experience insightful conversations with creative leaders in the fields of education, business, arts, and science. My guests shed light on the impact of language and culture on individuals and society as they share their stories and experiences. You'll be informed and inspired as we explore how language and culture make us human and bring hope in the midst of a challenging world. It is a great pleasure to welcome my colleague and friend Shawn Slakk to the podcast today. Hi, Shawn.
Hi, how's it going, Nora? Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you. I appreciate it because I've already enjoyed the conversation that we had just getting ready to record today. You know, with your background about emergent bilinguals and talking to presenting academic language and literacy and content integration, what I want to do and what I'm hungry to do with you during this conversation is content is the world. So to integrate what's happening in the world and what the applications of language and content and what it means for the culture, we've just got a nice array of things we can do. And as a matter of fact, you were just expressing how to relate what you were teaching with the point of view of language to mathematics when you were doing a workshop.
Right.
Please share with that because you do a lot of workshops all around the country and the world. How did this particular one turn out and why?
Well, this was a great one, and I love it when teachers come and have a different viewpoint a little bit than I do, teach a different discipline that I taught, and math frequently comes up, and the strategies and examples that I show for pre-teaching vocabulary, reading comprehension, and writing to show mastery. The math teachers go, well, some people think we don't do a lot of writing in math, but you do it, but it's also in a little bit of a different language than English. I mean, it is English, but math is a language unto itself. It has its own requirements. Numbers and symbols are the type of, for some reason, the word just escapes me, even though I used it a few minutes ago, of how it's written. It's more symbols and meanings that go with other written words that are spelled out, and students need to be able to express themselves when they read and when they write in math, and it's in English and and the content of math at the same time. So they're doing an awful lot, and that translates even to the real world out as adults, because you have to do things like pay the rent, balance your checkbook, make sure you got the right amount of money in your paycheck, pay your bills, etc. So it's not just math and numbers. It's a lot of content itself and literacy that has to go with that.
When you speak about literacy, and indeed your biography, which is on my website, fluency.consulting, we talk about your sessions being centered on academic language literacy. as well as content integration. Describe what literacy is from the point of view of what you do and the problems that you solve or address.
Okay. Well, we talk about the literacy piece, and that can you function in the setting or in the communication area that you have to be talking about. In school, of course, that's academic. That's discipline literacy. That's the language of the content. So if we think about whatever it is you're teaching, whether it's kindergarten or university level ESL or even adult literacy, the teacher is teaching the content, but also the vocabulary, the literacy pieces, the format, the structure, the oral or written grammar of that content at the same time. And so that's kind of tough sometimes to do both at the same time, but it's very doable if you use the content as the delivery method for the vocabulary. You connect the content to the vocabulary that you want them to use. You connect the reading pieces to the vocabulary and the content. And then if you do some type of writing, that of course is the reaction to the reading, to the discussion, all based in the content. So that literacy piece has to do with how can you communicate and interact with not just the subject matter, regardless of what it is, and the people around you and what you're asking them to do and what you need to do.
That's fascinating. And when we talk about, you referred to the ESL, that is the English as a second language classroom. Are those that are in these courses, and we are talking about, I assume, all age groups, are these classes all English language learners, or are they sometimes embedded within classes with native English speakers by background?
Right. Well, many times you'll find that unless it's a co-taught class where it's all English learners and content at the same time, there's two different variations. There's the English as a second language instructor who takes and provides services about the English language themselves for a specific set of time. Half an hour, 45 minutes if they're lucky every day, more or less depending on how much they need and what level they are in learning English. The rest of the time they have to be with the regular content teacher. Math, science, social studies, chemistry, PE, art, whatever. And so that's where you have the combination of the English language learners in with the native English speakers, and that can even be combined if it's a dual language program where half the students are Spanish or Mandarin speakers and they're learning English, or vice versa. Half of them are English speakers and they're learning Spanish or Mandarin. So it's a very interesting combo, and there's no one specific piece.
Hmm. And this is quite a national, well, challenge, I will put it that way, but just a national setting. There are many, many folks that are coming in from with many languages, including those spoken at home, as well as English speakers. Where do you see, Shawn, the progression going with the ensuring that young people both know English but also understand that they have a heritage language to keep? What do you do when you come across situations where these are happening?
Oh, absolutely. And just to clarify a little bit here, and that we have a lot of folks coming in from outside of the United States that are speakers of other languages besides English, but we have a huge population of nationalized citizens. They were born here and they speak nothing but the mother tongue of their parents and their grandparents that isn't English before they get to school, and then they have to work on learning English too. So there's a combo of both, and that. I'm frequently asked, well, parents say, well, how do we help our learners? How do we help our children in that with the language? And, there was a time when we said, okay, speak all the English, forget the heritage language. And to me, we've realized that that's a disservice. Now I say, please do your best to teach them as much of their heritage language as they can. Talk with them, teach them as much as they can, read to them, help them learn to write. Some of our heritage language schools have Saturday schools where they do Hebrew or Russian or whatever on Saturday, so that's an awesome piece there. One of the coolest things I ever heard, it was totally mind-blowing for me, what came from a gentleman that was the in charge of the Defense Department Foreign Language Department, and he said that I hope I get this right here. He said that the biggest job vacancies they had in this Federal Department of Defense was certified bilingual, multilingual employees, because that's how we protect ourselves from those that aren't going to be as nice as we'd like everybody in the world to be. So that one little piece there was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And part of what they liked about it was that when you speak more than one language, you think and approach problems, and you problem solve differently because of the way the language is created. So it depends on which language you're thinking in. Perhaps you solve in a different way, or if you want to go back and forth, So I just think that's the brain stuff of more than one language just is fascinating.
It is, isn't it? I hesitate to say mind blowing because it actually is mind enhancing. But so many people that are not in the language field believe that somehow people's brains get confused. We know that data shows that, in fact, brains can easily compartmentalize and cross-use languages. It's a basic human skill set, especially for those that are in their younger years, as the brain acquisition segment is very active. As a career educator and certified Gallup Strengths Coach, I engage with you and your team to bring energy, focus, and breakthroughs to all you do. Fluency Consulting provides workshops, presentations, talks, and team building events for K-16 educators and education-oriented organizations and businesses. Get energized, experience new insights, pathways, and perspectives. It's such a privilege to create and distribute this podcast. I'd like to ask for your help, though. Please leave a tip by going to the show notes of this episode or by visiting my website at www.fluency.consulting. Your contribution will allow me to continue these life-giving and hope-giving conversations. That's www.fluency.consulting. Thank you so much and enjoy. How do you, in your work, Shawn, help people to feel reassured about this, help to overcome some of the concerns that people have that somehow perhaps students learning learning the new language will get confused?
You're right. That is a common thinking, and people just have to ponder and think about it after we discuss it a little bit. One of the best ways, I think, to help them understand is that there's a process called translanguaging. That's where you switch back and forth between 2 or 3 different languages, whatever it is that your cultural group works with there. And so in the classroom, the way that would work would be if the primary language you're working on of instruction is, let's just say, English, and many of your speakers are Spanish language speakers, you instruct them in English. They can discuss what they want to discuss, learn it in English and or Spanish, whichever they need to get the content correct. And then you require them to do the output or the production back in English because that's the target language. But the key piece that you're talking about there is the translanguaging. They're using all of their facilities to go back and forth because sometimes one language has a clearer way of saying something than another language. In my opinion, and of course all of this is my opinion. There's a little bit of science stuff that goes with it, or lots of science that goes with it. which can, if somebody's interested, they can ask me and email me. But confusing. I think perhaps there is a thinking that the time to process between languages, or when someone's learning a new language or transferring one bit of information from one language to another, that appears to be confusion. Or the other piece is that one language is a little bit more nuanced or sophisticated in some of its levels of language and vocabulary and discussion. So, for example, if you go to that wonderful piece of assistive technology, Google Translate, and you put in a sentence, it may or may not give you back exactly the contextual, nuanced meaning you're looking for, because a word may have 40 different definitions and it has to be on context. So that's how you get folks to think about that. It's not necessarily confusion, it's refinement, nuance, sophistication. So I'm not sure if that really answered your question, but
Oh, absolutely did. The refinement and the toolbox, the idea of language as a tool is something that I pretty much say every podcast when I get a chance, because it's not a topic, it is a tool, and you are providing those kinds of workshops and trainings that allow people to make full use of this tool. Let me ask you from the point of view of how you approach in your work when students are at home in the heritage description that you provided, and their parents, their guardians are encouraged to richly engage them in this heritage language to grow it. And how does how do this the those that you train, I'm speaking here about the folks that are receiving language, or the educators that are working with them at whatever level, what kind of effect does that begin to have on the student's own view of themselves, their competence, who they are in the world, their identity with regard to language and culture?
oh, yes, absolutely. I don't see that it does anything but bolster them and say, hey, I'm special. This is who I am. This is my culture. This is my background. This is where I come from. That positive mindset, that asset based mindset that we're looking for. My culture has value. I love it when they start feeling comfortable enough to say, well, at home or in the country I came from, my country, we do this way. Or the story, something as simple as the story of Cinderella or Little Red Riding Hood, or some of those pieces. They have a little bit different tweak to them. And so, or you do a different culture. What does, Thanksgiving mean? Or maybe they don't have Thanksgiving, they have a different day of gratitude, or Christmas, or any of these holidays and festivals. So I just, maybe they make tea differently in a certain way because it means something more to them than just a cup of caffeine. So any time that you can pull in their culture, the enrichment and depth of their language and their culture and their personality, and that, I think that just helps them to explode into the world that, hey, I'm a useful, helpful person. I have extreme value, and I'm ready to conquer the world. I mean, we see that all the time on the news with children from different cultures, and that have big ideas on how to solve different things, and some of them pan out.
Indeed, they do. Now, are these the kinds of things, this excitement over what multilingual young people can do, are these the kinds of things that you say in your workshops when you're training instructors in language and literacy?
Oh, absolutely. If that's part of the set goals is to help them with the cultural bridging and the social emotional learning pieces that go with learning a language and blending cultures or, interleaving cultures, I mean, and that we don't want them too much blended because then it becomes mixed. We want to be able to show them that their culture by itself, the things they do are perfect. Sometimes you can blend things together and have something different. But absolutely, if teachers are looking for that and that's what the goals are, you betcha. And some of it becomes a teachable moment. For example, like I said, the gentleman just recently who was doing the math had a book of algebra in Arabic. And so he was showing us that here it is, here's math, it's in Arabic. You can sort of get and understand what's going on because all of these things are close enough. So maybe the students comprehend the content in their primary language. They just need English to express it if that language is the goal, is English.
So, what's happening when young people do not get academic language? What are your what are your interventions? What are you doing via your workshops to prevent what could be a bad outcome if students do not get academic language and literacy?
well, I don't think I've had to deal with that too much. I don't do it, but I know that at times the Department of Justice comes in and says, quite literally, you're not doing justice for your English language learners. So we help them have some strategies and remedies for doing that. I worked with the Department of Massachusetts to do that, and I've done a lot of consulting with different uh, school districts and states that have had some minor issues with that. Um, Individually, teachers say, "Oh, okay, that's academic language. Oh, okay, all right, I can do this." I love to show them that the strategies I like to present and make things more accessible work for every learner at whatever level they're at. Monolingual learners, special education learners, duly identified, multilingual, anybody. They can all be taken and differentiated into pieces that work for students to meet them where they're at their levels. So when that comes up and the teachers all of a sudden get this look on their face because they're a special education teacher and they're going, oh wow, this would work for my special ed kids too. Or oh, this would really work for my students that are just having a little bit of trouble getting over the bar there for reading or writing, and the only language they speak is English. Because let's face it, we're all language learners, whatever language it is that we're working on. You know,
That's for sure. We are consistently and continually learning, and that's beautifully said. And that's the nature of language, isn't it, Sean? That language is the
absolutely.
human enterprise. So if you're going to be learning how to learn a language, well, it's going to have an effect on everyone that's sitting in that room.
Absolutely. And, just something that popped into my head. You were asking about academic language. Just about any language you have to be successful in the classroom. To me, that's a academic language. But are there different levels of academic language? Absolutely. You're not going to, in the classroom for writing a 10-page research paper or 5-page essay, you're not going to use texting and emoji to write, or, you're going to be a little more formal. But on the street, you're not going to be super formal, or in the class, in the hallway, or the bus stop, or the lunchroom, you're not going to be super formal, or and that. So those registers and that's what we also like to show the teachers too. They're aware of it. Sometimes they just need to have somebody remind them of it because some of us have. It's been a while since we've been in those methods classes. So
Indeed, indeed. And one of the things that I used to do a lot in my classroom, and I know that the educators that I've talked to all over the country that have done similarly, and sounds like exactly what you just said, is every one of our young people, every one of us are multilingual, even if we do not speak, say, more than English, because we speak differently to each group with which we find ourselves.
Yes.
And that's very reassuring. In my classroom, it was very reassuring to my students to hear that they had already mastered bilingualism and multilingualism, and they were about to add another language to their mix, not
Right.
suddenly depart from their basic skill set.
And then they have the language of math, which is a certain way of talking and reporting, and the language of social studies and science that is a certain way of talking or reporting. So, we're all multilingual, even if it's just in some ways, and literate, even if it's just expressing ourselves in only one primary language of English or Spanish or whatever. So, yeah, good point. Yes, absolutely.
So, when you were meeting with that man, that language of math, and you just mentioned the language of science, the language of social studies, such a good thing to remember always, and through this podcast today for us here that are listening. Wonderful to remind ourselves of that. There's a language for each academic area.
And that even translates into the workplace. So, and that I'm starting to do a little more work again. I started off my teaching with adult learners, and I'm doing a little more work with adult learners. But in workplace literacy, that HVAC, that the air conditioner gentleman, the heating technician lady that comes out, he or she has a content, and there is the language of HVAC that they have to learn. And there's also that register of how do you deal with a client. What way do you speak to the client? What way do you speak to your colleagues, to your boss? You don't knock on the door and say, "Yo, dude," to the nice lady that answers the door. And or waitresses or certified nurses aides. So that content piece, the register piece, the literacy, the discipline literacy, content literacy,
I'm
is
raising my
not
hand
just
over
in a
here.
K through 12 classroom or at the university level. It really has to do with anything. I put that. I kind of help highlight that because one of the things I talk about to them because I personally like to make candies and goodies, and so for Christmas those are on the really good list. Get homemade chocolate truffles and biscotti and things. So we talk. I see that your hand is up. It's like, oh, I hope I'm on the list. So, but there's the higher level, and that would be content specific vocabulary, which is what would be considered tier 3. It's very rare and typically only used in that particular content of chocolate, and that would be couverture, enrobing. Theobroma is the scientific part of the chocolate part. Tempering, so that's the higher level vocabulary you might need to be successful in chocolate making. But the lower level piece is you roll it out, you coat it, Well, what does coat mean? Is coat, okay, you're coating it in chocolate, but it's not this big, fluffy, down-filled parka thing that you know. So we all have to think about the context of things too. So that's how I like to help people realize that yes, of course, there's content and context of everything. So
That's great. And as a person that grew up in Washington D.C. area and then married and moved to a farm in southwestern Virginia, the language that I had to learn, because when my husband said, "Well, the heifers are going to freshen," he could have been talking any number of languages besides English. And it really is a matter of learning the vocabulary, not only of that, then the dairy business in this case, but
yes,
also that of a particular geographical location. And that's what living language is all about, isn't it, Shawn?
Absolutely. So what if the heifers are going to freshen? What does that mean? I know heifers would be cows, female cows, but what does freshen mean? Because that's new to me too.
They're going to
They're
have
going
a
to have a calf.
calf. When
Well,
are they
hey,
going to deliver their
I don't know. Are
calf?
they freshening? Are they freshening their makeup? Putting on a little more mascara. I mean, because that's what we sometimes, ladies will say, "Oh, I got to go to the restroom to freshen
Yeah.
up." Yeah.
Exactly. In this case, their milk is going to come right out. But so, Shawn, let me ask you a question. What is your personal history that has brought you to this career, to this gift?
Well, I frequently introduce myself and tease people and tell them that, I mean, it's the truth, but I mean, that's how I start off. And I tell them that I gave my first sermon to a group of 2,000 people at approximately the age of 8, because I was a fourth generation lay minister in a religion and that. And part of what we did in that religion was to do ministry in other countries. So that was always something that was in the set of my brain, and that I liked teaching. I was always chosen to do Bible study, or later in life when I worked in restaurants and places like that, I was the trainer. Then I decided to become a teacher. But the language piece was always, I had this internal desire to be multilingual myself. So I studied Persian because we had some friends that were Persian. So we studied Farsi, Russian, Japanese, Spanish, of course, all these different languages. But it was more of a casual acquaintance to be able to say, hi, how's it going, in several different languages, not this formal piece. So when I finally got to a point, and even our family did things like Greek and Latin studies, and tried working on Spanish because there was the possibility of going on a mission in a Spanish speaking country. Or we had folks that came to the United States that spoke only Spanish. So when I finally got to the point where I was going to go to college, I said, okay, I want to be a Japanese language teacher and a reading teacher, because those are the two things I thought were the super most important things. Well, it turned out that at that particular time in life, I listened to the counselor, and the counselor said, "Oh, you'll never get a job in Japanese. Why don't you switch to Spanish?" So I said, "Okay, that's fine. It's not that was my second choice." So I switched to Spanish and kept doing the Japanese. And I did the algebra in the same semester, so I did algebra, Japanese, and Spanish all in one semester, and about died. But and then I did all the Spanish. I lived in Spain for a while to learn Spanish, and I visited other countries to practice my Japanese and Spanish. So that's kind of where it came from. The crazy piece of it is, after I graduated and I was doing substitute teaching, someone knew I had some Japanese ability, and they needed someone to monitor a student teacher who was doing their student teaching in Japanese. So I was the substitute master teacher in Japanese as my very first job out of college. So that was, to me, that was just like, wow, this is really crazy, because that counselor had no idea that, yes, there were jobs available for Japanese teachers. So I'm very, very rare and very few, and that was, interesting. So, and then the even more fun thing with Japanese was, a friend knew that I could teach conversational Japanese, and they had an international school. So I taught Japanese as a breakout session, as a special session to kindergarten or first graders, and we had lots of fun that year. So we did everything in Japanese. So I can't do that now because it's been 25 years since I've had anybody to practice with. So. But that's kind of the.
It's a shame when it falls, but that's a really interesting background. And I do love that there has been several guests, and I too stumbled into teaching a particular language that we either expected to never do, or someone else expected us to never do. So that's really cool. And you are the founder and CLO of ABCD SNS Consulting. What is it? Why did you get into the consulting business, and what is your consulting company do?
Right. Thank you for asking that. Well, I started out teaching, and I mean after teaching in the church at 8 years old. That was what I got the college degree for, obviously. And then I thought, okay, well, I'd like to reach even more, so I got the school leadership master's of school administration, and I did that as a school administrator for a while. Then I worked in the central office as a coach for a program called PSYOP, which is a type of teaching protocol. And then I moved on to the state of Massachusetts to help them with some of their issues they were having with English language learners. So I just kept moving up and moving up, and I thought, well, I want to try to do the best thing I can to help the most people, and that involves helping teachers help the students. And then about that particular time, I was invited to do a lot of different coaching with different companies and publishing some books and things with different publishers. And so they do professional development, which we're now transitioning to call professional learning, because that seems a little more on point, a little more nuanced, and that I like that particular piece there. So this is my again, in some ways, it's my desire to reach as many people as possible so they can become self-sufficient in helping as many people as they can. So the consulting piece there is how I came to that. I enjoy it. It's nice to be your own boss. A little scary now and then, especially since the world stopped about 18 months ago. So
Yes,
but we all
yeah.
coped and moved along, right?
We're making every effort, and when you're consulting something as ongoing as the need for language and literacy competence,
Mm-hmm.
there's always a need. There's always a need. Well, Shawn,
Absolutely.
it's been great for you to share there's some wonderful insights here, and I know that our listeners are just like, "Wow, yes, that I can pick up and run with myself, where I feel reaffirmed." Right now, as you turn to the listeners and you say, "Okay, before we leave, there's one more thing that I have to make sure that everybody hears, is aware of, warned about, exhorted." What do you have to share with our listeners here before we finish today?
Good question. And you warned me something like that was coming. Keep an open mind. I think in many ways, relish the fact that someone might be just a little bit different than you, can express something in a little bit different, a little bit more uh, um, sophisticated, nuanced way. Get to know someone who speaks another language. Have them practice a little bit of English with you. If they're learning English, ask them how to say certain things in their language, because familiarity with someone helps you to become more comfortable with them. And you may not agree on everything, and that's life. That's what makes everything okay, is you don't have to agree with everything, but keep an open mind. See what they have to offer. They might enrich your life, and you can certainly enrich theirs. So I just to me, it's we're a big giant globe, and as we can see now with different weather pieces and stuff that are going on, we are, and the internationality and the lack of borders with the internet and technology and climate and all those things and stuff, and that we're really a big blue ball in the sky now, instead of in little individual nations, little individual countries. We need to have that mindset more of we're inhabitants of Earth rather than certain countries or certain language speakers. So.
It's powerful, Shawn, and I love that along with that sense of indeed this blue world floating, that we're all together, you use the word relish. Relish each other, and at least be ready to listen to each other. Thank you so much for all of this.
Thank you again for having me. Good conversation, good questions. Makes you think a little bit. That's good.
Well, that, I hope, has been fun for you. It certainly has been fun for me, and I know that it's been very, very useful to the listeners. So, thank you again, Shawn. Good luck with your consulting and with that wonderful attitude that you bring, and may that help to bring about this unity and relishing that you've spoken about.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do to get the message out and help people be exposed to and find other ways to look at things. So that's great.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please share it and follow our socials at fluency_consulting. Check out my website, fluency.consulting, for more information on this guest and all my guests. And please donate, as it makes it possible for me to create and share these podcasts. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.